Hi, and welcome to the Literary Sipper. I'm Amber Beatty Hill, your host, and today we're going to talk about cards and letters. October is the beginning of my birthday gauntlet. It's not only my own birthday, but I have tons of family birthdays, tons of friend birthdays from here until pretty much February, and then I get a little bit of a break, and then I have another gauntlet that starts from April and lasts until July. And I'm very lucky to have friends and family that I love so much and that I need to or want to find the perfect card and write the perfect sentiment in that card. And it's very important to me. And it's an essential part of my friendships and my family relationships is taking that time on someone's birthday and also on days that aren't their birthdays, just a random Friday or when they're going through something, and writing to them. And even though the price of a Hallmark card is just absolutely asinine these days, it was $7.99, I think, for one the other day, and it wasn't even vaguely handmade. You know how some of them right now have like cutouts and collages that are kind of three-dimensional, or even the quirkiest, cleverest cards, and they're $7.99. That's showing my age, I guess, but I buy them anyway. But I've started really taking time to find great stationery, find amazing art postcards when I'm at museums, finding the right pen. I mean, it's a love language for artists and writers, right? The right pen or the right paper. And I spend time on vacations going to those kinds of places, going to the museum gift shops, going to the stationery stores, looking at the different weights of paper and the different stationeries and the different prints available and what I can get at a tiny little shop versus what I can grab at the grocery store. And I've done both, and there's no sweating the Dollar Tree stationery when you need it. But I think that's not the point, right? Letter writing is not the point. And emails are not letters. It's not going to your mailbox and receiving something that required the thought and time and energy of a stamp and a trip to the post office or a trip to the mailbox at the very least. It required the handwriting of their name on an envelope. And there's something very visceral about that exchange. And it has me really thinking about letters from writers and artists that are an essential part of literature in and of itself. The letters of Van Gogh, the letters of E.B. White, Hemingway, O'Keeffe, and the list goes on. And this has become part of the ephemera of artists and part of what we expect from library collections, or when an artist passes away and leaves their letters to an old university or school. It includes letters that they have received, maybe from peers and colleagues that are just as powerful a presence in our creative lives, but also their own ephemera, Kerouac's baseball cards or Blake's drawings, Vonnegut's doodles, John Lennon's doodles. All of these are part of the ephemera of being an artist. And with more and more becoming electronic, I mean, even my own drafts of books and revisions can be deleted if I wanted to delete them. I mean, sure, there's the ones that I print out when I'm getting my red pen out and I'm really doing the work of revision, but a lot of it is gone. I have journals, and we've talked about burning and not burning journals in a previous episode, but it is interesting to think what will happen with artists of a certain age, the 18-year-old right now who has the great American novel inside of him and is already started taking notes or framing things on his phone. What will happen to those notes? Where will they go? And will we be able to see the creative process in progress in the same way? And I guess that's why I do love the Substack and the Instagrams of the world where the people are lifting up that creative veil, where they're saying, this is what it's like to make art. And this is what it's like to make my art, and specifically to look at sketchbooks, to look at notes, Post-it notes, an artist's desk, to have those podcasts on process, recordings of people's voices, and these interviews that are so powerful, because how will we know how the sausage gets made unless we ask the question or see with our own eyes that it doesn't get delivered from on high, but instead is the result of years of hard work. And I was struck by the story about Susan Orlean, the writer who wrote The Library Book, which is one of my very favorite books of all time, but The Orchid Thief as well, many of you know, was turned into Being John Malkovich. Anyway, she had donated her ephemera, all of her books, notes on all of her books, to her college. And she was beginning to write a new book last year, I believe. And she had to go to the library that she had donated her collection to look at some of her own notes, because she knew she had notes and research there that she wanted to use in this latest book. And I always find that so fascinating that it wasn't in some email or text or disappearing story or Instagram post. It was this piece of paper that she needed to hunt down, and she had to go to her own university collection to find it. And are those electronic means of note-taking treasured? Can they be treasured? Or are we so used to their disappearance or their archiving that it doesn't seem special anymore to go and view somehow? Like, if I could get photographs of that entire Susan Orlean collection, would it feel the same as going to visit that library where the pieces were held and seeing them with my own eyes? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm always astounded by people's sketchbooks that I see all over Substack, and Austin Kleon's, of course, is in particular. But I think there is something about the idea of artist in progress that is so soothing to the soul, that it's just a human trying to connect with another human. And that's what the basis of letter writing is, and card writing, and why it's so essential. One of my best friends' husband passed away from cancer many years ago. And when he was in process of chemo and the dark days of dying, I didn't know what I could do. I was living on the other side of the country, and it wasn't like I could come see her or bring her lasagna or just sit with her on the couch or relieve some of the loneliness of that terrible time. But what I did was I put a note in my calendar every Monday to write her a letter. And some days the letters were missives about friendship and about how sorry I was. And some days they were memories that had just sort of sprung up about times that we all spent together. And some days it was just a big card that said, I hate that this is happening for you, or I hate that this is so far away. And sometimes it was just song lyrics, and sometimes it was just I love you in big, large letters. It didn't matter. It was that once a week she could go to her mailbox and there would be respite for those couple of minutes, and connection and friendship. And I know that it meant a lot to her. And I know that letters can mean a lot to people, and they are things that they cherish and save. I mean, we've all gone through stacks of birthday cards and kind of thrown out the ones that just say, love Bob or whatever, love Betty, but we kind of keep the ones that have a message for us. And so I would just urge you to make sure you're sending letters and not just notes. What are you trying to convey in this token of love? Can you work out an idea with someone on the page? Can you have a diary of your day? Just saying what you did that day is such a marker in time. I have a letter that one of my best friends wrote me when we were in our 20s, and it's filled with quotes of movies that we had watched together all along the margins. And then she'd tell me what she was doing. She was working as a nurse at the time, and she's telling me about some of her patients. And then she was telling me she was going out with this new guy. And then she told me she was going to try a new restaurant she had not been to. And it was just this 4 pages of her day. And it was so special. And when they would arrive in the mail, you would devour them because they were so personal. And it was just for you. And that person was thinking of just you as they were writing it, and they were thinking of just you as they were mailing it. And you were thinking of just them as you were receiving it. If you're of a certain age, we used to write pages and pages of notes to each other in between classes, and sometimes they were intricately folded in origami folds. And the time to pass in a study hall was time to make sure your friend knew all the gossip that was going on around you, all the things that you hoped to do that weekend. And you could return to that note over and over again, or you could burn them in a big ceremony about the ending of things or the ending of friendships or time. But it was time spent in a thought center with that one person. And it's more than just a sign off in an email, right? And we write the most requisites of notes now at the bottom of cards and emails and text messages. We've reduced language of connection to minimal letters. If you have a teenager like I do, K is its own form of dismissal, the letter K. But I encourage you to be a letter writer and to see it as an avenue to creativity. And for those of you who really struggle with the idea of knowing you want to be creative or knowing you want to have a more creative life, letters are a wonderful way to begin that process of writing because you know who your audience is. And that's so hard when you're writing a poem or a novel sometimes to imagine who's on the other end. But with a letter, you don't have to imagine. That person exists already there. I'll link 3 really great books of letters in the show notes today. E.B. White's, Van Gogh's, and O'Keeffe's and Stieglitz's, the letters between the two, the painter and the photographer, and of course the lover. They were lovers as well. But NPR has also done a series on letter writing where they talk about how psychologists have long theorized that humans need social connection to survive, and that letter writing is also this way of showing affection to your friends to show them that they really value them and how important it is to value them. And it might seem strange because we don't sort of offer explicit declarations of love all the time to our friends, but a letter can provide that sort of layer of security in your friendship that could mean so much to them, and that makes us all as human beings mentally and physically healthier. And so I thought that was an interesting article I recently read just about showing affection to your friends, and I'll link that one below as well. But 2 letters that have always struck me as the most powerful, and one is quite sad, and I won't read it here, but I do encourage you to seek it out. It's Dostoevsky's letter after the death of his first child, Sonia, and it's so encapsulates grief. And he's writing to his friend, and he's clarifying his own thoughts about it. And he's not writing to family, and he's not writing to his editor or anything like that. It's to this friend. And it is this idea that somehow people are going to think it's ridiculous that he would be so distraught over this child dying so young. But it is one of the most powerful letters I've ever written about the death of a child. And I think if you are going through that, or if you know someone who has gone through that, to read this letter, you will come to an emotional understanding that I don't think is possible without it. And if these letters didn't exist, or we couldn't look at them, we wouldn't be able to see the sort of internalization of emotion from one of the greatest writers of all time. And for many of us, we wouldn't have the words to describe it ourselves. But today, I'm going to read to you and end this podcast episode with the letter John Steinbeck wrote to his son. And in 1958, he writes, "Dear Tom, we had your letter this morning. I will answer it from my point of view, and of course, Elaine will from hers. First, if you are in love, that's a good thing. That's about the best thing that can happen to anyone. Don't let anyone make it small or light to you. Second, there are several kinds of love. One is a selfish, mean, grasping, egotistical thing which uses love for self-importance. This is the ugly and crippling kind. The other is an outpouring of everything good in you, of kindness and consideration and respect. Not only the social respect of manners, but the greater respect, which is recognition of another person as unique and valuable. The first kind can make you sick and small and weak, but the second can release in you strength and courage and goodness and even wisdom you didn't know you had. You say this is not puppy love. If you feel so deeply, of course it isn't puppy love. But I didn't think you were asking me what you feel. You know better than anyone. What you wanted me to help you with is what to do about it. And that I can tell you it. Glory in it, for one thing, and be very glad and grateful for it. The object of love is the best and most beautiful. Try to live up to it. If you love someone, there is no possible harm in saying so. Only you must remember that some people are very shy, and sometimes a saying must take that shyness into consideration. Girls have a way of knowing or feeling what you feel, but they usually like to hear it also. It sometimes happens that what you feel is not returned for one reason or another, but that doesn't make your feeling less valuable and good. Lastly, I know your feeling because I have it, and I'm glad you have it. We will be glad to meet Susan. She will be very welcome, but Elaine will make all such arrangements because that is her province, and she will be very glad to. She knows about love too, and maybe she can give you more help than I can. And don't worry about losing. If it is right, it happens. The main thing is not to hurry. Nothing good gets away. Love, Father. Or Fa, as John Steinbeck signs the letter. So I encourage you all to write a letter this week or a card and just add a couple sentences more than you would otherwise. Because as much as that person on the receiving end will be glad to receive your words, they're going to be even more receptive to knowing that you took the time to think about them. All my love. Talk to you next week. Thanks for listening to The Literary Sipper. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new. If you did, please subscribe and leave a rating and review if you're feeling especially generous. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, and keep putting your voice in the world. It's waiting for you.